Confound the man. Confounded me, he did. What is a ruler to do with such an uprising, with such an upstart? Here I sit, trying to write a report to Rome concerning the matter of the crucifixion of the Galilean and the troubles and the rumors. I hardly know what to do, what to say. I would have thought the mere mention of my name, or at least the authority of Rome, would have quelled the mob or silenced the man himself. The mention of my name, Pilate, Pontius Pilate. I wonder how the history books will remember me. I wonder if it will be writ large as it should be, as a man of ambition, decisive action, assertive and in control, loyal to the emperor, a man who brought order and stability to this little outpost of the empire. Goodness knows I've tried. I never wanted to be here in the first place, but you do what duty requires, even if it means going to places you never imagined. You put in your time, you climb the ranks, you live or die by your reputation, your name, my name. I should be celebrated through the streets of Rome. But will I? Or will I forever be associated with the carpenter, that outback preacher, the crucified troublemaker, the bewildering poet? For a short time, he and I shared a stage on the world's theater, and high drama it was, too. Pitting the powerful against the defenseless. There should have been no contest. I should not have given him the time of day. Mars knows I had it in my power to expedite the matter and be done with it. Why did I give him a trial? Why, indeed? I will be asking myself that question until the end of my days. And why did the trial go the way it did? I suppose others will be asking that question for even longer. I must start to write, but what is there to say? Start at the beginning, I suppose. But which beginning and whose? Somehow this incident is, how to put it, it's so much larger than the characters involved. It is about the Nazarene, of course, but it is about me and about the Jews and their hopes and their relationship to the empire and their confounded God. Stop rambling, Pilate. Just get it down on paper. Start at the beginning with that outrageous Passover parade.
A very large crowd spread their cloaks on the road, while others cut branches from the trees and spread them on the road. The crowds that went ahead of him and those that followed shouted, "Hosanna to the Son of David! Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord! Hosanna in the highest heaven!" When Jesus entered Jerusalem, the whole city stirred and asked, "Who is this?" The crowd answered, "This is Jesus, the prophet from Nazareth in Galilee."
The parade on that Passover day had all the markings of a revolt. Crowds in the streets, shouts of acclamation of a Messiah, a deliverer. To a people who imagined themselves in repression, imagined, indeed, there could be no better situation possible for them. Rome had bent over backwards to keep them happy. They had, though I cannot understand why, allowed the people to maintain their own temple and practice their own religious traditions. They had given power and authority to the chief priests and a court of sorts with the Sanhedrin. But what more could they have wanted? But you know how it is with a people. You give them one thing they want, another and another. There's no end to the appetite. You give them autonomy and they want liberation. And that Passover celebration, every year it is the same thing. They remember some dusty old story of their dusty old God delivering them from Egypt through the wilderness into the promised land, the land they now live in. Yes, of course, they are subject to the supreme authority of Rome, but Rome is Rome. It is her destiny to give order to the world. Why can't these people understand that? And then this fellow comes along and talks of what? I never heard him preach, of course. Stories, parables I hear about what? About the kingdom of God. Now that is seditious. That I can write about. Seditious rumors, mobs in the street, a nation clamoring for deliverance, and claims they made that he was their liberator. Yes, that would wash. And there was a betrayer, one Judas, a known zealot, a dagger man, infiltrator, I imagine. The priests paid him off with a good Roman coin. Good for the empire. They will be commended in the report.
Then one of the 12, the one they called Judas Iscariot, went to the chief priests and asked, "What are you willing to give me if I deliver him over to you?" So they counted out for him 30 pieces of silver. From then on, Judas watched for an opportunity to hand him over.
We trapped him with stealth, patience, a bit of bribery, and some well-trained soldiers. He was in the garden.
Then Jesus went with his disciples to a place called Gethsemane. He said to them, "Sit here while I go over there and pray." He took Peter and the 2 sons of Zebedee along with him. He began to be sorrowful and troubled. Then he said to them, "My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. Stay here and keep watch with me." Going a little farther, he fell with his face to the ground and prayed, "My Father, if it is possible, may this cup be taken from me, yet not as I will, but as you will." Then he returned to his disciples and found them sleeping. "Couldn't you men keep watch with me for 1 hour?" he asked Peter. "Watch and pray, so that you will not fall into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak." He went away a second time and prayed, "My Father, if it is not possible for this cup to be taken away unless I drink it, may your will be done." When he came back, he again found them sleeping because their eyes were heavy. So he left them and went away once more and prayed the 3rd time, saying the same thing. Then he returned to the disciples and said to them, "Are you sleeping and resting? Look, the hour has come, and the Son of Man is delivered into the hands of sinners. Rise, let us go. Here comes my betrayer."
I like the way the betrayal worked out so well. It was like clockwork. The soldiers shadowing Judas to this garden where he knew Jesus would be. They are also to be commended.
While he was still speaking, Judas, one of the 12, arrived. With him was a large crowd armed with swords and clubs, sent from the chief priests and the elders of the people. Now the betrayer had arranged a signal with them. "The one I kiss is the man. Arrest him." Going at once to Jesus, Judas said, "Greetings, Rabbi," and kissed him. Jesus replied, "Do what you came for, friend." Later, Jesus said to the crowd, "Am I leading a rebellion that you have come out with swords and clubs to capture me? Every day I sat in the temple courts teaching, and you did not arrest me. But this has all taken place that the writings of the prophets might be fulfilled." Then all the disciples deserted him and fled.
So much for the revolution. It was that easy. Sure, they could put up a bit of a scrap, but once again, The imperial forces reigned. We can show no mercy to cowards and troublemakers. The followers knew that. They ran like dogs. So far, things were going well. The ringleader was under arrest, his fellow insurrectionists scattered, terrified. The next thing to do was simply procedural. Turn him over to the high priest Caiaphas and his lot, and let them try him and then turn him back to me for sentencing. Caiaphas was well paid. He would not risk his position with Rome for a backwoods preacher. They would have some little God talk and it would be over. Caiaphas could be trusted.
Those who had arrested Jesus took him to Caiaphas, the high priest, where the teachers of the law and the elders had assembled. But Peter followed him at a distance, right up to the courtyard of the high priest. He entered and sat down with the guards to see the outcome. The chief priests and the whole Sanhedrin were looking for false evidence against Jesus so they could put him to death. But they did not find any, though many false witnesses came forward. Finally, 2 came forward and declared, "This fellow said, I am able to destroy the temple of God and rebuild it in 3 days." Then the high priest stood up and said to Jesus, "Are you not going to answer? What is this testimony that these men are bringing against you?" But Jesus remained silent. The high priest said to him, "I charge you under oath by the living God. Tell us if you are the Messiah, the Son of God." "You have said so," Jesus replied. "But I say to all of you, from now on you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of the Mighty One and coming on the clouds of heaven." Then the high priest tore his clothes and said, "He has spoken blasphemy. Why do we need any more witnesses? Look, now you have heard the blasphemy. What do you think?" "He is worthy of death," they answered. Then they spit in his face and struck him with their fists. Others slapped him.
We had our charge, blasphemy. Whatever that means. Whatever it means, for me it was good enough. What am I, a theologian? What should I care what they agreed or disagreed about? It was enough that he was on trial, and I was his judge. The blasphemy line would not work for Rome, but treason would, sedition, plotting to establish a rival kingdom within the empire. That was worth pursuing. Surely the Passover crowd was shouting that out. There were hundreds of witnesses. He was feeding the agitation of the mob. Son of David, King of the Jews, yes. That could get him to the cross. If only he would agree to the charge.
Meanwhile, Jesus stood before the governor, and the governor asked him, "Are you the King of the Jews?" "You have said so," Jesus replied. When he was accused by the chief priests and the elders, he gave no answer. Then Pilate asked him, "Don't you hear the testimony they are bringing against you?" But Jesus made no reply, not even to a single charge, to the great amazement of the governor.
Confound the man! What can I tell Caesar about this trial? There's nothing to say. He made no claims to be king. He answered my questions with confusing statements, almost accusing me of falsehoods. But mostly he said nothing. I went to the crowd, who by this time had become hostile to the man. How fickle these fools are, mindless sheep. One day they were clamoring for his coronation, and now they were jeering at him. But I must remember that this is Rome. The empire strikes fear into people as it should. It keeps them in their place as it should. This crowd knew well that I had the power to crush them like stones and turn them into pavement. Their fragile little leader was now nothing to them. His voice was rendered mute by my questions, I suppose. So I turned to the crowd. In a fit of whimsy, and I played the puppeteer for them. I dangled their little Jesus on one hand and this scoundrel Barabbas on the other, and ask them to play a game with me.
Now, at the feast, the governor was accustomed to release for the crowd any one prisoner whom they wanted, and they had a notorious prisoner called Barabbas. So, when they had gathered, Pilate said to them, "Whom do you want me to release for you, Barabbas or Jesus, who is called Christ?" For he knew that it was out of envy that they had delivered him up. Besides, while he was sitting on the judgment seat, his wife sent word to him, "Have nothing to do with that righteous man, for I have suffered much because of him today in a dream." Now, the chief priests and the elders persuaded the crowd to ask for Barabbas and destroy Jesus. The governor again said to them, "Which of the two do you want me to release for you?" And they said, "Barabbas." Pilate said to them, "Then what shall I do with Jesus, who is called the Christ?" They all said, "Let him be crucified." And he said, "Why? What evil has he done?" But they shouted all the more, "Let him be crucified."
I washed my hands of the whole affair. I was tired of playing games with a spineless mob. I would show them all the strength of my hand and the power of Rome.
Then he released Barabbas to them, but he had Jesus flogged and handed him over to be crucified. Then the governor's soldiers took Jesus into the praetorium and gathered the whole company of soldiers around him. They stripped him and put a scarlet robe on him, and then twisted together a crown of thorns and set it on his head. They put a staff in his right hand. Then they knelt in front of him and mocked him. "Hail, King of the Jews," they said. They spit on him and took the staff and struck him on the head again and again. After they had mocked him, they took off the robe and put his own clothes on him. Then they led him away to crucify him.
Were you there when they crucified my Lord? Were you there when they crucified my Lord? Sometimes it causes me to tremble, tremble, tremble. Were you there when they crucified my Lord?
The soldiers then had their way with him. He was theirs to play with now.
They came to a place called Golgotha, which means the place of the skull. There they offered Jesus wine to drink, mixed with gall, but after tasting it, he refused to drink it. When they had crucified him, they divided up his clothes by casting lots, and sitting down, they kept watch over him there.
Were you there when they nailed him to the tree? Were you there when they nailed him to the tree? Sometimes it causes me to tremble, tremble, tremble. Were you there when they nailed him to the tree. Were you there when they pierced him in the side? Were you there when they pierced him in the side? Oh, sometimes it causes me to tremble. Tremble, tremble. Were you there when they pierced him in the side?
I have to say, and I cannot put this in the report, something else happened. There was more than dust and a few whimpers from his mother in the air that day. The sky darkened. An eclipse, I suppose. I should consult the astrologers. But even more, the earth stood still. There were chills up my spine, and then felt like the earth would explode itself.
From noon until 3 in the afternoon, darkness came over all the land. About 3 in the afternoon, Jesus cried out in a loud voice, Eli, Eli, lema sabachthani, which means, my God, why have you forsaken me? And then Jesus had cried out again in a loud voice, and he gave up his spirit. At that moment, the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. The earth shook, the rocks split.
Were you there when the sun refused to shine? Were you there when the sun refused to shine? Sometimes it causes me to tremble, tremble, tremble. Were you there when the sun refused to shine?
After he died, it was procedural. Arrangements were made for a place of burial. It was over.
Many women were there, watching from a distance. They had followed Jesus from Galilee to care for his needs. Among them were Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James and Joseph, and the mother of Zebedee's sons. As evening approached, there came a rich man from Arimathea named Joseph, who had himself become a disciple of Jesus. Going to Pilate, he asked for Jesus' body, and Pilate ordered that it be given to him. Joseph took the body, wrapped it in a clean cloth, and placed it in his own tomb that he had cut out of the rock. He rolled a big stone in front of the entrance of the tomb and went away. Mary Magdalene and the other Mary were sitting there opposite the tomb.
Were you there when they laid him in the tomb? Were you there when they laid him in the tomb? Oh, Sometimes it causes me to tremble, tremble, tremble. Were you there when they laid him in the tomb?
The next day, the one after Preparation Day, the chief priests and the Pharisees went to Pilate. "Sir," they said, "we remember that while he was still alive, that deceiver said, 'After 3 days I will rise again.' So give the order for the tomb to be made secure until the 3rd day. Otherwise, his disciples may come and steal the body and tell the people that he has been raised from the dead. This last deception will be worse than the first." "Take a guard," Pilate answered. "Go make the tomb as secure as you know how." So they went and made the tomb secure by putting a seal on the stone and posting the guard.
Another deluded prophet gone. Another rebellion crushed. We were done with the man for good. I hope the citizens of this little armpit of Rome will get him and his kingdom talk out of their heads. We sealed the dreams of their little God up with a big, strong stone.